Good morning and welcome all to this week's webinar. We appreciate you joining us again. Before I give the little disclaimers, I did want to mention for those of you that read the industry update, which I know certainly all of you, the link to the CBRE report that came out yesterday was updated right after we sent out our update. So we're going to include the correct link today. So if you're having any frustration trying to get to the CBRE hotels report, you'll be able to get that today. Possibly somebody will drop it in the chat field right now. But anyway, with that, again, welcome. I want to remind you that this week's webinar is designed for the information and use of our restaurants, hotels, travel and tourism partners, and other friends of PRLA. It is off the record. We're always happy to work with our friends in the press for any requests that they have, but this is not that time. So if you're with the press, please disconnect and call us later. And with that, I'm happy to introduce Melissa Bova to kick things off. Melissa?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm going to try and be efficient today because I think a lot of us want to watch television within the next hour. So I'm gonna run through everything we know. Not a ton of updates, but I will have an announcement for next week's webinar, which you'll hear it here first. So we should provide a lot of interest in next week's webinar when we get to it. Today is Inauguration Day. It is on TV if you're not watching it. President-elect Biden will become President Biden within the hour upon his swearing in. And of course, we are already seeing a lot of changes within the new administration. As you probably all heard, Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, Dr. Levine, has been appointed assistant head of Secretary of Health at the federal level. She obviously is accepting that position. So we will be getting a new Secretary of Health within Pennsylvania. We expect that announcement to be later this week. It's also why, in a lot of ways, we're a little bit in flux as it pertains to the vaccine information and things like that, because of the fact that she's going to be leaving the Wolf administration to go with the Biden administration. We are anticipating a lot of executive orders to be signed today by President-elect Biden, actually more than any president maybe in history. Typically, a president-elect or a president upon their first day in office will do one executive order. It sounds like President Biden will be signing no less than 15 executive orders to really undo what they believe are things that were done with the Trump administration. So a lot of things are going to be happening today. We are expecting new rules and regulations as it pertains to COVID. President Biden has made it no secret that he is in support of a federal mask mandate. This doesn't mean anything or change anything to any of you, because Pennsylvania has had a mask mandate for a while now. So it doesn't impact Pennsylvania, but it would impact those states that either did not have a mask mandate or had a more lenient mask policy. So we expect, like I said, a lot of things to happen. We do have a new Congress. We will today, if they haven't been already, have some U.S. senators sworn in, which will give control of the U.S. Senate to the Democrats. So we expect a lot of things to happen. And of course, what you heard last week is President Biden released his American Rescue Plan, which is the first of what he considers to be two items to really get us through COVID. And of course, it includes a lot of other things as well, which has been what's been keeping everybody up at night lately. So the American Rescue Plan from the Biden administration, which is expected to be introduced shortly, contains the following provisions. Federal minimum wage increased to $15 an hour. And I'll go through what should keep you up at night and what shouldn't once I get through the details of the plan. Federal minimum wage increase to $15 per hour, eliminate the tipped wage entirely. That is part of the plan. Lots of changes to OSHA and COVID protections. It would bring back the emergency paid leave. As you all know, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act expired technically on December 31st. Under the previous package, that $900 billion package, they allow it to be an option for businesses to use it until March 31st. So you're no longer required to, but you have the option to use it. His plan would bring it back until September 31st. And also would eliminate the 500 employee threshold. So it would require all private and public sector employees to offer the paid leave. It would also provide additional paid sick leave up to 14 weeks for family and medical leave. It includes grants for small businesses, $35 billion in funds to leverage $175 billion to help small businesses. It does increase those direct checks to individuals, that $2,000 that everybody's been talking about. It will add an additional $1,400 to the $600 that was passed in the previous bill. Extends unemployment insurance, $400 a week, does eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, and also creates a national vaccination plan. President Biden has said he wants 100 million people vaccinated before his first 100 days in office, or by his 100th day in office. So that's part of the plan. What's not included is Restaurants Act, which I think everyone was a little surprised at, because I think the assumption was that with a Biden administration, with the Democrats in control, Restaurants Act, that $120 billion recovery plan would be included in a rescue plan. It's not. There is assistance for businesses in this plan, but not the restaurant bailout that I think we were all looking for. So that's all going to be negotiated over the coming weeks. That $15 minimum wage and elimination of the tipped wage. For those of you that are regular weekly attendees, I said that this was a discussion that we're going to have. I don't believe, and we do not expect it to be a discussion that's going to be included in this recovery package. So we don't believe it is a right now discussion. As you all know, for all of you political nerds, whenever you introduce a bill, you ask for everything you want, knowing you're going to negotiate. And that's really why this is included in here, is that President Biden made a promise. He's including it in the bill. We expect minimum wage and tipped wage to be a discussion that will happen shortly, within a few months, but not as part of this package. So please stay tuned, because we will need to activate, we will need to educate, we will need to talk about how the elimination of the tipped wage especially will impact our industry, and also what a $15 minimum wage could do to some of the businesses that are in the T in Pennsylvania. You know, $15 isn't a minimum wage for every place across the country. So we will have an extensive debate. So please stay tuned as we start to work through all of that, but we do not expect it to be a right now conversation. P3. All banks can now process your P3 application. So please start working through and applying for that if you haven't already. It's open to everybody, the big banks, small banks, the in-between banks, everybody is processing the applications, whether it is your first draw or your second draw. So, and we've gone through a lot of information on this. And of course, I'll answer any questions that people have. But just as an FYI, it is fully open and you should be applying. And of course, we're going to be working on some other fixes as it pertains to the P3. I do want to flag something right now, which is a big issue that we're trying to work through. If you received the first round of the P3, and you did not use it all for eligible expenses. So theoretically, you converted some of it to a loan because you couldn't meet the employee requirement because they've been shutting down restaurants in Pennsylvania. So you converted a certain amount to a loan. In that scenario, you would not be eligible for a second P3. We're hoping to get that fixed, but that's something that you might run into if you're looking to draw down a second P3, if you did not use your first P3 for entirely eligible expenses. So we did just learn that. I did want to flag it for all of you. So please, we're hoping to get it fixed. The plan is to get it fixed, but it's definitely a concern for many people that converted it to a loan because you could. Next slide. All right. I've been saying this for a few weeks now. The 2021-2022 state legislative session is officially underway. It has been for a few weeks now. We had the legislature, the House was in session for last week for the first time. I talked about some of the legislative items they moved last week. Next week, the House and Senate are both in. So next week is the first week the Senate's in session. As you all know, PRLA has a list of legislative priorities. We're getting sponsors for those legislative priorities. We have a commitment from leadership to move them to help the industry, and we're working through all of that right now. Just last week, the Senate did reveal its committee chairs. We have some new committee chairs at the state level. Senate Law and Justice, Senator Mike Regan is now the chair of that committee. Senate Community Economic and Recreational Development, which is our tourism committee. We have a new chair there, Senator John Udicek. He is an independent, but he does caucus with the Republicans. And we have Senator Capoletti is now the minority chair of that Senate Community Economic and Recreational Development Committee, which deals with all of our tourism issues. So for my DMOs, for my attractions, everything related to tourism, we have brand new chairs on that committee in the Senate that PRLA has meetings with to get to know them and educate them on our priorities. So a lot of what's going to be happening over the next few weeks internally within PRLA is John and I will be meeting with new members of committees now that committee assignments have been made, educating them on our priorities with a focus on COVID, but also looking towards long-term priorities. You know, at the end of the day, I promise COVID is going to be gone. And we do have other legislative priorities that the association will be focusing on. So we're really laying that groundwork now, and we'll be asking all of you to engage as we start moving bills again. Bill introductions. Bills are being introduced. I mentioned this. I think we've had at least 100 bills have been introduced so far. And over the course of session, there's thousands of bills. So the legislative process is beginning. It's moving slower than anyone wants it to, but that's government for you. But as we introduce our bills, we'll be keeping you informed, like I said, of where we need you to act, either in offense or defense as it pertains to pieces of legislation. So this is kind of a ramp up time for us, and in future legislative updates, I will be spending a lot more time kind of discussing legislative needs and where we need you to engage. Next slide. Philadelphia. So Philadelphia has resumed indoor dining in its own very special way. There is a 25% of seating capacity, so it's not your maximum occupancy. To that end, it's very complicated. I know this comes as a shock to all of you regarding how they are determining capacity. So it's the lawful occupancy that is known for a restaurant. And if you do not know your lawful occupancy, it's one person per 60 square feet in the dining area, including staff. So it's really, we're not where we need to be in Philadelphia. And we're hoping that we will get there soon. I think there's recognition from at least the mayor's office and the Commerce Department that it's complicated, this new calculation. So we are kind of telling people follow 25%. If you don't know, and hopefully we will be able to work with the administration in terms of figuring out enforcement and how that's going to look. Also, as an FYI for Philadelphia, it's still 4 people per table from the same household. You have to have a face mask and shield. Indoor events are still prohibited in Philadelphia. We did have some follow-up conversations. If you want to have an event indoors with no food and beverage, you need to get permission from the Department of Health to do so. But as of right now in Philadelphia, there is still a ban on any indoor food and beverage consumption. And like I said, we're hoping to work through all of this with the administration in Philadelphia to try and get restaurants back to 50%. They are looking at having some type of requirements for air ventilation, be the first place in the country to do so. And we're hoping that those requirements will not be anything that puts an undue burden on the industry. So that's where Philadelphia is. Philadelphia, again, is the only place with separate guidance than the state right now. Next slide. All right, statewide. Case counts aren't bad. We're at a little less than 5,000. You remember we peaked at about 12,000. So we haven't seen the kind of the big surge I think that people were expecting from the holidays. So case counts, and of course that leads to the next question of what's next. We had a conversation, I had a call with the Department of Health this morning, specifically about vaccines. But of course, if you get the Department of Health on the phone, you talk about other things. And I asked, when can we start reopening items? And right now they are not planning to make an announcement. They're talking internally. They're not planning to make an announcement in the short-term future because they are especially concerned about this new variant that's out there. So they are not prepared to let us reopen anymore right now because of the concern of the new variant, and also trying to confirm if the new variant will be if the vaccines will protect from the newest variants that are coming out right now. So until they get those answers, they could not give me, they never give me a timeline, but they couldn't give me a timeline of when we will get through this mitigation. Now, they did say it is likely that when we get there, it'll kind of be backing out of the mitigation, kind of like we worked into it. So it'll be a step-by-step process to get us back to 50% indoors for events, get rid of the meal requirement, bring back bar seating. They're talking about it, but until they figure out this new variant situation, they're not prepared to make any announcements in the near future. Vaccines. In Philadelphia, restaurants and hotel workers are in 1B. I had a conversation with the health department, as I mentioned this morning, to try and get the state to move restaurant and hotel workers from 1C, where you currently are, to 1B. They're going to discuss it, but the state does seem to be very firmly aligned with the CDC guidance, which still has us in 1C. So they're going to run it up the flagpole. I think we made a compelling argument about the need for our industry to be vaccinated. With grocery store workers, probably if we could be before them, we should be, but at least they're in 1B, we should be as well. So they're going to have those conversations, but right now our industry is in 1C. Vaccines, to this point, as you can tell, they don't have enough vaccines right now. They did do a dashboard yesterday. If people are in that 1B, you can start registering for vaccines, but they aren't readily available. Every Thursday, the state finds out how many vaccines they're getting the next week, and then they're getting them out to people, but there certainly are not enough vaccines in the state of Pennsylvania for the number of people that are eligible. So you can begin to pre-register, but generally it could be up to a month before we see all of that 1B start to get vaccinated and complete their vaccinations. The State Department of Health is especially hopeful for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which should be approved shortly. That is a one-shot vaccine. So there could be more of it. It doesn't need to be held at 80 degrees below zero to last, so it can go to more places that might not have the facilities to have the super cold vaccine. So once they get that, they expect to be able to ramp up vaccinations a lot more. To that end, the Department of Health will be on next week's webinar, and they will be providing an update on vaccines, information on the vaccines, and answer any questions all of you have. So I get to take a little break next week when we have them on the call, and they will be on the front end of next week's webinar at 11 a.m. to provide information on vaccines. So they should be able to answer any questions, and hopefully we'll have either news if we're being bumped up to 1B or bumped up anywhere, at least in the vaccination schedule. So that's where we are on the vaccine front, because I know that's what everybody's starting to think about. And that's the questions I think John and I are getting more than any other are the vaccine questions. I think that's my broad overview. So I'll turn it over to Hope, and then I will work through some questions.
Great, thank you, Melissa. So we do have some webinars coming up outside of our regular industry update with Melissa. Tomorrow we will have a webinar with BEST. They are going to be presenting information about human trafficking in the hospitality industry, the importance of training your staff, and also the best practices for creating an environment that will make it inhospitable for human trafficking to even occur in your business. So please check that out tomorrow too. We don't have this listed up here, but it is on our website. The HLA Forum Speaker Series is back. Tomorrow they will be having speakers at 3 p.m. talking about the state of our industry and the outlook for our industry. And then next week on the 26th at 1 p.m. they will be having a speaker series on consumer and business travel trends and travel. So business travel trends for 2021. So please check that out. And then the NRA will be hosting a webinar on the 28th. It is a half-day session, so it is a little more time, but it's a technology expert exchange. There will be panels and different speakers talking about how different businesses pivoted during COVID and how they are recovering right now. So it could be a really good half-day spent listening to some of the other individuals that are operating outside of Pennsylvania and what they've been doing. Registration is free. Next slide. As always, just as a reminder, carry out PA, please make sure you're up there and you're getting all your information out so that consumers know what you are offering at your business. And we are still working through our HARP grants, and we'll take any donations that we can to help us continue to support the frontline workers. We do have a social media, we do have a kit put together that if you would like to promote that to your customers, just let us know and we can help you out with that. And on the next slide is just talking about training. Again, we do have training with ServSafe. There is some other training programs like Serve Success and ServSafe Alcohol. So there are some other programs that you could be looking at that are online. There is remote proctoring being offered with all of them. So your employees wouldn't necessarily need to go to a location for testing. They could do that through their computer. And the dining commitment, again, is a really powerful way for your restaurant to establish trust with the patrons that dining indoors is safe. So it's got some training components, it's got certification, and it does have some promotion opportunities through the National Restaurant Association. So please take a look at that if you haven't joined yet. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Melissa.
All right, let's work through some questions. Can you add in payroll contribution like SSI and unemployment to P3 round 2 figures? You cannot include federal taxes as part of the P3. You would need to check with your bank in terms of state taxes, but I don't believe you can't include the employer contribution. You might want to check with your bank to see if they're being any more lenient on that, but there is a prohibition on including federal taxes in your P3 calculation. And I know I've gotten this question before regarding for your tipped employees. You are allowed to include what they would make in tips in your P3 application. So if your employees average $25 an hour, including tips, that can be part of the payroll when you apply for your P3. I'm not sure what unemployment for corporate officers denied. I think we've worked through that. I don't know if that's a question or a statement though. So regarding our second round of P3 funds, we think it would be better for us to wait as long as possible to maximize the amount of money we can spend on payroll. Any update on whether we should be concerned that funds may run out if we wait too long? We have not heard that there is it's not running out like the first P3. And quite frankly, that's because you do have to prove a revenue loss. So I think you can wait. Technically, you do have to apply by March 31st. We should get, now that it's opened up to everybody, it'll be included, I'm sure, in one of the updates this week. We'll get an idea of how much is being drawn down to let you know that how much is remaining. I would anticipate no matter what, though, if the funds are being drawn down quickly, that in the next federal bill, they will refund the P3. The P3 has been too successful for them not to continue to refund it. So I don't think at this point in time, you need to lose a lot of sleep about needing to apply right now, especially since the Biden administration has made this a priority. But definitely stay tuned, because if they do run out of money, it will take the time it takes to pass a federal bill to refund it as well. In Philly, and I think Ben covered this, but I'll speak to it. Confusion regarding outdoor events that offer food and beverage, only 25 people, regardless of size of venue. Yes. Outdoor events, and Ben put this in here, cannot exceed 10 people per 1,000 square feet with a maximum of 25 people. So Philadelphia, for an outdoor event, you can't have more than 25 with food and beverage. To that point, it's funny because John forwarded an email to me today, and I've gotten a few questions regarding private events in people's homes for people that might be catering or anything like that. I know this doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing makes a lot of sense lately, but they are saying that you need to use that maximum occupancy calculator at the state level. So it's 10% of what an occupancy would be in someone's house. Now, during the mitigation in December, it was a maximum of 10 people. Really, it's not all that enforceable, but they are saying that you need to do the 10% rule, even if you're catering in somebody's home for a private event. I think we shared the website for pre-registering for the vaccine. And this is something to that end on the vaccine front. We're working to get some clarifications on this. Some counties have pre-registration set up, but also As entities are getting vaccines, hospitals are getting vaccines, doctors' offices are getting vaccines, they're saying that you should call and see if they have vaccines available as well. So I don't know if we've entirely gotten a good feel from the Department of Health regarding if you need to sign up via the state to find out when a vaccine is available, or you need to be checking with local entities that are providing the vaccines to see if they are available, if you are indeed eligible. And that's going to be something that the Department of Health will be covering on the webinar next week as well. Yeah, so I did mention indoor meetings and gatherings can be held in Philadelphia without food with approval from the Board of Health. Yes, if you email them and give them the scenario, they are, depending on the scenario, is allowing some meetings to occur with social distancing, with mask requirements, but you need to explain what the event is. There can be no food and beverage, and you do need to get permission from them to have that event. I have a brewery which has a question on P3. The regs show they need to be down 25% in a quarter in 2020 versus 2019. They went through a very large and expensive upgrade and got it up and running in January of 2020. The revenue in 2020 is up for all quarters, but they're a fraction of what they should be. So they can't hit the 25% decrease requirement for loan forgiveness, but they are extremely off track and struggling from where they should be because all the bars and restaurants have been closed. Is there an exception for a company that had bad timing and went through their upgrade and infrastructure prior to the pandemic hitting? There's not. And I don't know if that's something that with another recovery bill that will be considered, but you do, unfortunately, that they don't have an exception for bad timing in the P3 right now. So there is that revenue requirement. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer there. Now there might be, as we are seeing, the Biden administration does have a lot of facets in this America Rescue Plan that might be able to help other entities that might not be completely eligible for the P3 or could have another option. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But the 25% for a second round of the P3, that is a pretty hard and firm requirement. Thank you, Sean, for the thank you. Pittsburgh specific, what is the current limit on indoor gatherings? Pittsburgh is Allegheny County, which is following the state. So you're at the 10% indoor gathering limit, depending on size, which is, unless you're a convention center, it's going to be 10% of what your occupancy is for an indoor gathering within the city of Pittsburgh. Can you please confirm the minimum salary amount to avoid overtime requirement? And do we know a date this is required? We're digging deep. So in Pennsylvania right now, as of January 20th of 2021 until October, I think it's the 5th of this year, we are aligned with the federal salary requirements, which is $35,000 and change. So that is Pennsylvania's requirement right now, $35,010 or something like that. That's the current threshold for your salaried employees. So if they make less than that, they're subject to overtime. If they make more than that, they're considered a salaried employee. In October, that is going to increase to $40,500-ish in October of this year for Pennsylvania. Next October of 2022, it's going to increase to $45,500. Then after that, every 3 years, it's going to increase according to inflation. So right now we're at about 35,000 and change. In October, it's going to increase to 40,000. We are working, as those of you who have been PRLA members for years are well aware, we had cut a deal with the Wolf administration to increase the minimum wage, preserve the tipped wage, and stop the increase in the salary threshold. That did not get passed last session. We're continuing to work through that and trying to find common ground. But as of right now, we will see an increase to $40,000, $40,500 that first week of October of this year. Can P3 funds be used for improvements made to increase sales, such as increasing space size or outdoor tables? Yes, it can. Let me pull up my cheat list. Yeah, I mean, Operations expenditures, that's a pretty big thing. Indoor, outdoor, or combined, or air pressure ventilation. An expansion of additional indoor, outdoor, or combined business space is an allowable expense. So yes, that is an allowable expense for your 40% under the P3. So 60% has to be used for payroll, 40% that is an allowable expense. And of course, I like going, there's a thank you for addressing the salary limits. I had to think about it, but I did have the answer. I think this might be the fastest that I've ever completed a webinar. I guess I'm talking fast today, but like I said, next week we will have the Department of Health on. Do the new P3 rules apply to the first round? Yes. The 60-40 splits for the usage of the funds also apply if you're drawing down for the first round. Molly, if I didn't have a 2 o'clock meeting, I'd be right there with you. Yeah, and I'll end with this. I mean, today is a new start for the country. You know, whether you're happy or you're not, this is a really important day for us. And no matter what happens, we're going to work through it. And I think we're going to see changes, but I think there are also changes or discussions that need to be had right now. So I think we're all looking forward to a new beginning and working through and thinking a little differently about how we do things, but we'll keep on moving forward. So far, things seem to be going peacefully, which is nice.
Well said, Melissa, and thanks so much for the good work on the webinar today. I guess the pregame show has already begun and the inauguration takes place at noon.
Yep.
Well, with that, I think we're done. So thank you, everybody. Have a very safe day, and we will see you next week.
Stay safe, everyone. Talk soon.